Hey guys, Mustached Tom here to review the movie Good Boy. So, I've seen this trailer quite a number of times, and I was quite fascinated by this prospect of a horror movie that primarily focuses on a dog. Now, why that is so fascinating is because there's a large swath of people that have this sort of unspoken rule in the horror genre, or in movies in general, really, but it pretty much, hands itself pretty heavily to horror anyways, and that being the well-being of a dog in the movie. Or any animal of the sort, but dogs seem to be, of the highest caliber, I suppose. Which, the dog owners, I suppose that makes sense. But people in general, even just seeing dogs, in that context is, it kind of is a cheap shot, as it were. So it was really interesting to get a sense of a movie that was going to have that be the consistent issue throughout the entire movie. Is the dog going to get hurt? So yeah. The movie starts with the dog on the couch. We learn pretty early on that the dog's name is Indy, short for Indiana Jones, I suppose. And the human owner, whose face is blurred throughout the majority of the movie's name is Todd. So Todd is having a seizure or something in his room. The dog, Indy's there, being the good boy, as the movie refers, and the owner himself at some point does refer. The sister comes in and checks on him. And then we cut to, I'm assuming, real footage of the very same dog being raised. So that was neat. So anyway, so we see Todd out in the rain, wanting to claim in this new house out in the middle of kind of nowhere-ish. And we do begin to see that the dog sees this dark figure, hearing these voices in the cellar, and what I found peculiar, spoiler alert, is that the voice sounds very feminine, and then we don't really get an answer to why that was the case at all ever in the movie, but here we are anyway. So there are some missed opportunities here. At any rate, Todd heads inside. He manages to fix the lights after some time, as our buddy Indy sees some more shadowy figures and actually begins to move toward them. So, there was a show back in the day called Courage the Cowardly Dog, and I bring this up because I was confident that they were going to make a reference or have it on the television. We do see some dog-related show on the television. I'm surprised that we did not see any Courage the Cowardly Dog, as this dog seems to do the exact opposite of move toward anything that seems to be any indication of trouble, as it were. So it double checks the dark corner, and the owner Todd eventually comes in and sees that he's looking, obviously, from the guy's perspective at, just a wall or a corner. We learn through context that the man's family all died young. And then we see another figure behind the dog. But this figure actually ends up being another person, that being a hunter. Spoiler alert, this hunter does not come into the picture at the end, and I find that one very weird, all things considered. Anyway, we see that the sister is continuously calling him out of worry and panic. And it's kind of, talking about how dogs have been used to detect certain things from people, which is true. So obviously, he's trying to sort of ignore all of that, and Indy is like freaked out when the lights get turned on, because they're like on the porch or whatever it is. Later that night, we do get a nightmare sequence. I guess this is assuming that we assume that dogs have nightmares. I guess that could be very well the case. I can only shrug. I don't know. I've seen other movies where dogs just sort of like pop up their heads like abruptly, so I don't know if that's like meant to be a representation of that or whatever, but anyway. Point being is that these figures are starting, shadowy figures are sort of, alluring throughout. The good boy, Indy, sniffs around the suspicious looking door. And then the owner, Todd, gets ready to leave for wherever he's heading. As the dog, Indy, does begin to whimper and just stays there because he was told to do so. And waits all the way until nighttime, sitting, just waiting. However, there is this other dog he sees, and this dog isn't a real dog, spoilers, I guess, or again, follows it up. Indy hides under the bed, being brought up the stairs, waiting until the figure reveals itself to be him returning, but returning in a much worse condition than when he left. That being Todd. Like this blood work we see being patched up, all this stuff. So we cut to what I think is another nightmare, of the dog checking out the graveyards alone, hears a noise and looks down, and then when he awakens, we see that it's still in the room, but heads down to see that owner Todd is banging his head against that sus door that we saw from before. So good boy Indy pulls him out of his little stupor, as it were. So the sister calls him again. He's far from having it still. Indy continues to check on self-opening doors and ends up in I believe this is like a garage or like room, and sees the father, or Todd's father, I believe this is, or grandfather, I forget which one it was exactly, but regardless, same outcome anyway, as a spirit in spiritual form, as this hand comes up behind him and pulls him into something or other, as he's later found by Todd, now covered in this black ichor. And he himself begins to puke out blood. Cut to him, both of them, at the hospital, where Todd is denied health care because he took too long seeking help. Now, obviously, I think this is meant to be a heavier criticism on the healthcare system, but you would think that it would be the inverse of everything that we just saw. That, the closer you were to having problems, the faster you would be allotted into a situation where you get looked at. That's how you would think that our healthcare system ought to work in real life. No. I, you would wish, but we aren't there. We never have been, and we have only encroached upon something and it gets taken away, obviously, or is being threatened to be taken away as of currently day speaking. So, the the fight for healthcare has been in horror movies for a long time because the healthcare system outside of horror movies has been shit for a long time. Spoiler alert, in real life, that's how that goes. At any rate. So, Todd is checked in by that hunter guy a second time. Meanwhile, Indy is experiencing another figure close by. At night, Indy's just looking, staring out that window. As we get this pretty long shot of just him, like, staring out, like, because how the room is set up, there's, like, that one way in, I guess. And we see the shadowy figure moving through, and then obviously Indy once again goes to check it out. He hears a whistle and or sees a body rather, where those feminine screams used to come from. This is the implication that the previous owner had died down there, I guess, as what the movie is trying to imply. Anyway. So he's pulled eventually under the bed by his owner Todd, who is like freaking out himself, who eventually gets like hooked into the monster, or the figurey monster or whatever, and gets locked, and Indy gets locked in the shed, the dog shed, as a punishment. It eventually, like... Hold on. Did I write this backwards? I'm looking later at my notes, because... Yeah, I think this part of the movie gets a little bit confusing, because he, like, gets out of the area, the doghouse, eventually. And then, like, we see him, I believe, like, when he gets back in, he, like, I think I didn't write it, but I think something happens to Todd that makes Indy, like, go out for help by jumping outside of the window, like, literally, like, breaking through the window, but then eventually getting ensnared by a trap. Yeah, I did write this backwards. Then he gets locked in the doghouse. Sorry. Yeah, I was wondering why I accidentally wrote something earlier than it happened. Anyway, Indy sees the shadowy figure inside. Obviously, he's trying to fight his way out. Sees these two lights in the distance, which is, I guess, representative of the previous dog. And the dark figure is super close now, pulling at the very chains of Indy. The cellar doors, which were locked throughout the entire movie, are abruptly open, which is bizarre. But we do see that the previous dog had died down there, being stuck down there. We then cut to Todd, who is solo for a bit, waiting inside, suffering, as it were. And Indy eventually gets to him. Then we have this weird outer body experience moment where Todd, like, sees his own dead body. Again, this is where the movie really does get odd. And then he gets, like, pulled away from the entity, and the dog chases after all throughout. So Todd is like shunted into the suspicious room, which is also the cellar, as it would turn out. Indy rushes. This is where Indy rushes out the window way later in the movie. That's why I was confused, because I was like, why did he jump out the window earlier? Yeah, he jumps out the window here to like scoop back around outside and then run into the cellar. We do see that the shadowy figure takes over Todd, or Todd's ghost, or whatever it's meant to represent at this point. I don't know. As it turns into a skeleton, as he waits there patiently, then moments, or however long moments pass, of the sister opening the cellar door, getting to Indy, and then picking him up as they travel away, as Todd has passed away, and now Indy has been taken in by the sister by the end of the movie, and that's where the movie Good Boy ends. Now, despite my disorganized notes, I will say that the third section of the movie is where the movie does lose me, regardless of my own notes fucking up a little bit there, but yeah. So I think I knew what they were going for. It's clearly a story of a man suffering from something, I guess a cancer or something worse. The entity represents, I don't know, like a different version of him, I guess. And despite all that, Indy's sticking by until the very end. And yeah, it is clear that the movie even tries to imply that this is like a family passed down thing, and that the previous owner had something happen to the dog previous to it that was even worse. So Todd had the fortunate ability to have the sister come by at some later point and pick Indy up. But I do feel like having that be the case feels a bit off. It feels like a Good Boy failure is a bizarre way to end the film, if you ask me. I saw one other review pointing this out, referring to the idea that somehow, some way, Indy finds a way to pull him out of this house that has, engulfed him, by some manner. I would think that would be the way, and that the sister could very well come into the picture as well, and maybe even that hunter guy, who knows, right? Because that he doesn't really play a vital role outside of just being the one other person that's in the movie for a short period of time. Um, so yeah, uh, if and I'm not saying that every horror movie needs to have a bad or good ending. It's just that it's an oddity that a movie called Good Boy has the good boy failing at the end of the movie. I suppose that's supposed to be the subversion of this horror movie, is that despite his good efforts, it was never ever going to be enough. Um, and I think this poster is very misleading, honestly. I think it's a bit of a. I think this cover is a bit of a cutout or cop out. I would have liked to have seen several entities, as it were, sort of like, you know, trying to take over the guy or whatever. And it's only ever really the one, and it's not even that good. So, yeah. In terms of a score, I feel like this is like a 5 or a 6. Like, it's okay. Apparently, this is a directorial debut, I guess. That's what I learned from the other review that I was watching. So I guess it's a good, like showcasing of, like, what you're capable of like a directorial debut. It's just that I would hope that reviews of this nature, and reviews that the one I was watching at least, are the ones that get picked up and listened to, rather than the ones that are just outright praising it just in the name of it having a good dog, and that's the end all be of it all. I don't think that that's fair for the movie or the director, just hearing praise because it has a good dog in it. I don't think that's enough. I think that what you can achieve with that gimmick / premise is a lot stronger. Your cover even seems to imply so, like the dog against several entities, as the cover seems to imply. This never happens in the movie, so I feel like, again, that is a missed opportunity. Maybe we could have learned that the family before him, like his entire generational family before him, were fighting each other in their lifetime, and the dog was trying to be the one to, be the comfort dog to try to get them all together, but failed. And then, you can have that same representative dog be like the guiding light for this dog, Indy, to pull Todd away from these several entities, this previous family entity, in their variational forms, trying to snag and pull away at Indy at several times throughout the movie. I feel like that could have been is a much stronger narrative that could have been layered on top of the idea that Todd is, dealing with this whole self-monstrous sort of concept. Because again, the movie cover seems to imply that there's more going on, and I feel like a misleading cover can often invoke you wanting to see something along those lines, and that was me. I wanted to see, how Indy would approach these several entities, sort of encroaching, as it were, as this cover seems to again imply. So I feel like, again, a pretty big missed opportunity there. So that's where we're gonna end this movie review. And if you ended up enjoying this movie review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. When I head you to my petition about small YouTubers, second to my PayPal, we can help support me and my channel directly, and third to my Discord server, we can join, collab, shield, all that cool stuff for free. And until next time, everyone, bye bye.